Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. We're talking about the law and municipalities and how they propose to fund sports arenas and stadiums with Dr. Andrew Zimbalist, a leading expert in sports economics, and wrote the book, Sports, Jobs, and Taxes. This is, I heard one review was, this is an essential read for a city resident whose city government is proposing to pay for the building of a new stadium.
Wow.
So you can borrow this after I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shannon, what do you think about the Spurs and building a new stadium for them? We already have two other stadiums.
Well, I think a lot of people, I think the mayor's getting a lot of good press right now. People are really reacting. I always like to do an informal poll, and it feels like people really respond well to that. The perception is that she's fighting for the people. She wants more transparency. But I have a question for you. What if her legacy is she's the reason that we lose the Spurs?
Well, spoiler alert, that's one of my questions.
Oh, okay.
For
I didn't mean to take your question. And I want to know about football, if we're getting football or not. And I also want you to feel my pain with me that I had an emotional reaction when I see that skeleton of a building and the site when
Institute of Texan Cultures.
I have a very emotional reaction when I drive past there.
Well,
Looks wrong.
There's a lot of sports fans here in San Antonio, and,
right.
And they don't want the Spurs to leave. So I want to talk about the psychology of that, but first I want to allow Dr. Zimbalist to finish his thought about why the leasing of city property as part of a larger project sometimes doesn't work out with a net economic benefit.
Okay, so very often you see these very elaborate and pretty plans for mixed-use development. And on the basis of the plan and the potential tax revenue that it would generate, the city goes ahead and says, green lights the project. They issue a bond, and the bond requires debt service. If the plan does not actually produce the investments that the plan calls for, like maybe there are no hotel companies that want to put a hotel there, maybe there are no restaurants who want to put a restaurant there, and so on. If those potential investments don't materialize, then the revenue that they were supposed to generate isn't going to materialize either. And the city is left holding the bag on the debt service. So that's one issue that often happens. Another issue that often happens is that the city will provide fiscal incentives to get businesses to move into the area. And very often the businesses that move into the area adjacent to the stadium or the arena are businesses that already exist in another part of the city, maybe 5 blocks away, maybe 10 or 15 blocks away. And so what really is happening is that some company is moving from Avenue X to Avenue Z, but they're still doing the same thing they did before. They're just doing it now next to the stadium, whereas before they did it on another part of the city. So what does that mean in terms of the generation of tax revenue? It means that there is no net increment to tax revenue. Mm-hmm. It's the same activity. It's just relocated to another part of the city. So those are two things that you have to look out for. Now, you also mentioned hotel taxes as a way to finance this. Mm-hmm. Hotel taxes and automobile taxes, automobile rental taxes, both sound like you're levying the tax on foreigners or on visitors. So the residents themselves don't have to pay. Nobody's going to raise their property tax. Nobody's going to raise their income tax or whatever. It's the foreigners or the outsiders who come stay in the hotel and rent cars, they'll be paying. Well, the reason, and that's a typical plan, the reason why that plan doesn't usually work out is because if it were possible to raise your hotel taxes and not discourage people from coming to the city, which is what these plans often propose, raise the hotel tax, if it doesn't discourage people from coming to the city, you can raise the hotel tax anyway and use that money not to build the stadium, but to improve your schools or to improve your security or to improve your infrastructure or whatever. So the idea that this is a free good because it's a hotel tax on outsiders doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's the same thing with car rental. If you could increase your car rental prices, taxes on car rentals without discouraging rentals of cars, then again, you could take that revenue and use it for any public purpose, not necessarily for building a stadium. So in either case, the notion that this is a free good because you're making outsiders pay for it doesn't make any sense.
And I think I read a chapter in your book about that, about how some people will decide not to come here for their convention because it's too expensive. You know, if they can go to another city and have their convention over there, they might do that just to save a little bit of money.
That's right.
So I heard a story about the city of Houston when they were building a football stadium prior to 2004 so that they could have the Super Bowl there. And what I read,
He knows where you're going.
was that efforts to bring more retail, restaurants, and bars to downtown for the 2004 event failed due to insufficient demand. And many businesses that opened for the Super Bowl closed a few years later.
Exactly. And this is particularly problematic with regard to football, less so with basketball. If you build a new basketball arena, it'll depend on who owns the arena and whether there are fiscal incentives going on and so on and so forth. But the idea about a basketball arena is that if it's well managed, you can use that 200 to 300 days a year because you have basketball and the NBA home team, Peter Holt's team, is going to play 41, 42, 43, 44, depending on whether they're in postseason or not. They're going to play, let's say, 40 to 50 games a year. But then you have the ice capades that come to town. And then you have the rodeo that comes to town. And you have concerts that come to town. It's possible to use an arena that has a cover, right? That has a roof. It's possible to use that 200, 300 days a year. And indeed, if we're talking about an arena like Madison Square Garden in New York City, sometimes it's used twice in the same day. And so you can use it even 400 times a year. But a football stadium, on the other hand, how many times a year does the NFL play football games? 17 games a year. Half of those are at home. So 9 or 8 games, maybe a preseason, maybe a postseason. So we're talking about using a football stadium 10, 12, 14 days a year. Maybe you bring in Taylor Swift for a couple of concerts. Maybe you bring in Bruce Springsteen for a couple. Now we're up to 20. But how many games, how many days are there in the year? I think the number is 365. So if you're a hotel owner, or if you're a restaurant owner, are you going to want to move your restaurant from one part of the city next to the football stadium when the football stadium's only being used 20 days out of the year and it's dark 345 days a year? It's not necessarily an attractive investment. Now, there are special circumstances, of course, that can sometimes apply. But yeah, for the notion, as popular as football is, as the NFL is in the United States, and of course it's even more so in Texas than the rest of the country, as popular as it is, it's not a very good tool for economic development.
So that might answer your question, Shannon, about whether they would put a football stadium down there. I remember that coming up. They also talked about building a baseball stadium down there for the San Antonio Missions, but I think everybody forgot about it because I haven't seen it on any of the renderings.
I haven't seen that. No.
Let me add, if I could, and I think it's an important caveat, that the actual economic outcome is going to depend a lot on the particular circumstances, and we can go into some of those if you want later on.
Sure.
But one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that more often than not, when you have the San Antonio Spurs in your community, or when you have the Los Angeles Lakers in your community, or take your pick of a sports team, it's something that's enjoyed by the members of the community. It's something that brings community together.
Right.
It unifies. It's something that they share with each other, and people get excited about it together.
Go Spurs.
That's a positive. So
Right.
when I make these critical economic arguments, I'm not saying don't ever do this, don't ever build a stadium, don't ever build an arena with public money. I'm saying when you make your decision to do it, understand that this is not, generally speaking, an engine that's going to promote your economy. It's going to cost you money to do it. But you might very well decide, okay, I'm willing to pay an extra $15 a year in taxes, or whatever the number might be, in order to have my NBA team in town.
Oh, okay, we got to take another break. We'll be right back.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.